Shout out to my brother Jermaine. He'll make a cameo. Unfortunately, he'll get a cameo appearance on this, but here we go. Season number 3, Diverging Clear Podcast. As always, this is dedicated to you, Ma. Love you. Here we go. Let's kick off Season 3, the Diverging Clear Podcast.
Approach diverging, milepost 20.04. Diverging clear, milepost 20.06. Welcome to Diverging Clear, your transportation podcast, with your hosts William Moore and Jermaine Walker.
Welcome to the Diverging Clear Podcast, Season number 3 premiere, titled properly, The Wreck. I'm your host, William Moore, and of course, not quite joined solo today, not quite a solo episode. Actually, me and Jermaine actually recorded a 53-minute episode of this while I was out on the East Coast in Baltimore. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, I lost the video. So I do have a couple snippets of it that I will incorporate. I will show as we were discussing some of the issues with the East Palestine derailment. Those will be, he will be in this episode. So it's just not just me solo. But anyway, thank you and welcome to season number 3. Got a lot of stuff going on in the rail and logistics news and side of things. A lot of things to come. Don't forget to follow us on Snapchat. Not Snapchat, I ain't got my Snapchat yet. Follow us on Instagram at Diverging Clear Podcast, Diverging_Clear_ Podcast. Also on Facebook, Twitter at Diverging Clear 1, and also Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your fine podcasts at, Google, all of the good places. We're available everywhere you can find us. Also on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel also for all this great content that we're going to be dropping this season. So let's get things started. First, just want to say once again, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to do a quick run through of some of the things that's been going on of significance here lately. But the biggest thing we will be talking about today will be the East Palestine derailment. Occurred back in the early part of February. I actually had just got out to the East Coast a couple days after I got up, a week or two after I got out there. That's when the derailment happened and the fall off of the derailment happened. But we'll get into that here real soon. First, want to start off here on my rundown. A couple news stories that's been I thought was of importance that I wanted to bring to you here. So first one we'll bring up will be the BNSF derailment, train derails up in Minnesota, as if we needed another derailment, which part of this train contained ethanol and corn syrup. Yeah, weird mix, but that's what trains do. So one thing I do want to show is just read a part of this article. So the first part of this article we talk about, this is according to Progressive Rail News. An evacuation order was issued early the morning. I'm sorry, let me start that over. A BNSF train carrying ethanol and corn syrup derailed early in the morning in Raymond, leading to the evacuation of 20 leading to an evacuation of area residents. I'm gonna get this together. Sorry. 22 cars derailed. No other hazardous materials were being transported on the train. No other injuries occurred because of the derailment. Local responders and BNSF personnel were on site to continue to mitigate the incident. There have been no impact to drinking water, and air monitoring has been conducted over the past several hours indicates no detectable levels of concern, BNSF officials said. The main track remained blocked and estimated time for reopening the line is not yet known. Of course, the cause of the incident is under investigation. Federal Railroad Administration officials are on the ground, according to a tweet from the U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. In addition to the NTSB is sending a team to investigate the agency tweeted. Raymond is about 106 miles west of Minneapolis. Fire departments from Raymond and nearby communities responded. The evacuation area of a half mile was established around the derailment site, according to, and I'm gonna butcher that county, the county sheriff's there, according to the official press release. So once again, another derailment, another fire in the community. Reason I brought this was up because, like I said, with the spotlight being on East Palestine, just wanted to show people that, I'm not being biased in any way, shape, or form, but unfortunately, this stuff happens a lot. It happens a lot. There's a variety of factors that contributes to it. I don't want to speculate on any one thing, but as I like to tell people, the rail industry is dangerous. Even though we do it and we do it safely, it's still a dangerous industry. So I don't want no one to take that for granted, that the work that we're out here doing, is safe and easy, and it's an easy job. It's a very dangerous job. We just have a lot of safety and regulations that help mitigate those risks, to help make it as safe as industry as it can. But don't get me wrong, it can be better. But we'll discuss that at a little bit more at another time. So after I just butchered that story, let's see if I can do better on the second one moving forward. Other breaking news here over the last since the last time we talked, or our last time I did an episode, was the STB approves the CPKCS merger. So after years, it seems like, but it really wasn't years. But after several, several years of the fighting, as the railroad merged, the numerous podcast episodes I did about the soap opera that was unraveling from CN throwing in their name, trying to get the KCS after the CP put in a merger, put in a claim for merger, to all of the different concessions. So it was just a lot, but they finally got to the finish line. The STB did go ahead and approve the CPKCS merger, which is good. I thought that it should have been approved. I didn't think that was. I think what it did was that it showed, it put everybody else on notice that they have to do better, because this move does inherently increase competition in the rail industry for a number of reasons. One thing I will point out is that when on the intermodal side of things, so there's a group called EMP, Equipment Management, I believe it's Equipment Management Program. It was a intermodal interline type of agreement that was UP and NS were the creators of it, but other railroads were able to participate in it. So like you had CP was a member of it, I believe CN was a member of it, but ultimately what ended up happening was when CP put in a merger for the KCS, the UP kicked the CP out of it because of the inherent competition it was going to create. So I thought that was kind of petty, but that's pretty par for the course for the railroads. But anyway, so the merger was finally approved, and So this was a statement that was released. This is another article that was in. Geez, I'm losing my thoughts here. That was on Progressive Railroading, so that's the source of this article. It says the Surface Transportation Board today announced it has approved the merger of the Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern with several conditions. The combined entity of the two smallest Class 1s will be known as Canadian Pacific Kansas City and will be the smallest of the Class 1s. The merger creates the first railroad providing single line service spanning Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Among many of the other single line options, the new direct service will facilitate the flow of goods from the Midwest to the Gulf Coast and Mexico, the movement of intermodal goods between Dallas and Chicago, and the trade in automotive parts, finished vehicles, and other containerized mixed goods between the United States and Mexico, the board noted in its decision. The STB decision takes effect on April 14th. Petitions for reconsideration of the decision must be filed by April 4th, which is passed, and requests for a stay must be filed by March 27th, which is also passed. The board expects the new single line service to foster rail traffic growth, diverting about 64,000 truckloads annually, and support investment in infrastructure, service, quality, and safety. The transaction also is expected to drive employment growth across the CPKC system, adding over 800 new union represented operating positions in the United States, the decision states. In addition, the STB believes the merger will foster new Amtrak passenger rail opportunities as CPKC, I gotta get used to that acronym, has committed to support Amtrak's plan to expand service on new lines. Just a second here, sorry about that. These commitments, along with the CP strong record as an Amtrak host railroad, have won Amtrak's endorsement of the merger, decision states. The merger is an end-to-end transaction, meaning there are little to no track redundancies or overlapping routes, the board said. In acknowledging such mergers can pose competitive risks, the STB will impose numerous conditions designed to protect competition. The board establishes a detailed obligation to keep gateways, that is, connection points between the CPKC system and other railroads, open on commercially reasonable terms, thereby preserving efficient routing options via other railroads that were available to shippers before the merger, the decision states. Among the conditions, the board will establish what is characterized as an unprecedented 7-year oversight period of the merged entity, along with extensive data reporting requirements to monitor the CPKC is preserving efficient interline options for shippers at protected gateways. Some rail industry constituents believe that too much consolidation among Class 1s is STB's members acknowledge. Regardless on which side one takes in this debate, the board is in charge by Congress with reviewing the proposed merger in light of the state of the industry is actually existing, decision states. Given the current realities and limited opportunities to provide meaningful competition for the largest Class 1 railroads, as outlined above and discussed in length in this decision, the board concludes that the transaction should improve rather than degrade the performance of the industry. It is for these reasons that the board approves the merger. So in essence, that's the kind of the rundown of why the board went ahead and approved the merger. I didn't see any unprecedented reasons why the merger shouldn't have been approved. Like I say, even with the combined railroad, it's still the smallest Class 1. But what it does is I believe it helps improve some of those connection points where people lose time, where you have to interchange and all of that stuff. They kind of provide opportunities for these things to flow more freely. Some of the railroading has a lot of cumbersome movements, cumbersome processes. This kind of streamlines them definitely between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. So it definitely helps to improve those connectivities, and we'll see if it increases the competition. I believe it will. I believe it puts the other class ones on notice that y'all got to step your game up. One of the points that Chairman Oberman made that was pretty funny, he said, I could tell that this was going to increase competition by the level of objections I got, the level and the other types of objections I got from the other class ones. They were asking us to impose, he stated they were asking us to impose open access to these various gateways, where Oberman stated, but these carriers don't provide that openness to the other carriers themselves, so why would we be force CPKC to open up their gateways in a similar way? So I thought those were some interesting and very valid points that Chairman Oberman made. You know, there was a lot of, as a result of this East Palestine and derailment, everybody was up in arms about stopping the merger, but as was noted by the board, the CP or the Kansas City Southern, neither one of them were involved in that derailment. That was Norfolk Southern. So why should their business be impeded because of the acts of another railroad? So I thought that was pretty interesting too. And I just think that it was don't impose what one railroad is doing. Their actions doesn't reflect what the KCS and what the Canadian Pacific have done. Those two railroads are relatively safe, and if you go back to when the supply chain issues were going on, and the STB was requiring the Class 1s to make daily reports as to what they were doing, or weekly reports as to how they were going to improve their supply chain issues and their crew management and their traffic movement. It was a couple railroads that wasn't included in that report. One of them being the Canadian National and the other one being the Canadian Pacific. Neither one of those railroads were stymied or lumped into that category because they were doing what they needed to do during that time. It was the other class ones, the BNSF, the Union Pacific, the Norfolk Southern, CSX. Those were the ones that were being forced to report back to the SCB weekly because either they were coming with some weak plans, or they just they couldn't justify what they were doing. So I think that it's gonna be interesting to see how it shakes out. Metra made some quite a few raised quite a few concerns, which I think they'll be able to work through. But at the end of the day, I think it was a good decision, and I'm just curious to see how the rest of the rail industry responds, because this is actually Saturday, April 8th that I'm recording this. This merger will be, or the control will be shifted over here in a little over 6 days. So it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out. I'm very curious to see what the landscape of the rail community is going to be. And my final story here on the rundown, before we get to our main story, we'll discuss here is Union Pacific began shifting commuter rail operations to Metra. Now, if you recall, if you've been following the podcast, the Diverging Clear Podcast, we discussed this in detail on our season 2 season 1 episode 2. We discussed this it was titled Union Pacific versus Metra. We discussed this at length because we were trying to figure out exactly what was going on and why they were doing it. But like I said, if you want some background on this story, check out that season 1, episode 2 of the Diverging Clear Podcast. And essentially, this is kind of the wrap up to what we were discussing would possibly happen whenever this dispute was ended. Basically, the Union Pacific wanted to get out of, as I explained in that podcast, Union Pacific and Burlington Northern Santa Fe both are contracted out by Metra to operate commuter rail lines. The BNSF operates from Chicago to Aurora. They're contracted out by Metra, and the Union Pacific did so on several lines, including UP West. They also were contracted for Metra. So Union Pacific had to maintain an entire commuter rail operations department to operate those rail lines. That was part of the deregulation, part of the the creation of Metra, going all the way back to the 1970s, late 60s, early 70s. So like I said, the other episode I give background into why Union Pacific had to maintain these operations and why Union Pacific was trying to get out of it. So now we start hearing that they have begun a slow transition. I don't know, details have been announced as to what and how much it cost, or if it cost, or what it was. But according to this episode, or this article here, Union Pacific began shifting commuter rail operations to Metra. The one thing that they do start to speak of, now this is according to the article, Union Pacific Railroad announced yesterday it's working with Metra to safely and seamlessly transfer Union Pacific's commuter rail operations to the passenger railroad. UP officials anticipate completing the transfer by the end of the first quarter of 2024. Metra will take over the services that include train crew, mechanical, car cleaning, rolling stock maintenance, ticket sales, and some engineering services, UP officials said in a press release. Several management employees transitioned to Metra earlier this year with plans to start transferring mechanical and transportation craft professionals in third quarter 2023. We greatly appreciate Metra's collaboration and continue to provide excellent and safe service to commuters during this transition, said Eric Geringer, UP Executive Vice President of Operations. UP will continue to maintain the track and manage train movements on the 3 Metra lines, UP West, UP Northwest, and UP North. UP's interest in transferring its commuter rail operations has been controversial for some time, going back to when we did our episode. The 2 railroads have been entangled in various legal matters over the proposal. But in fall 2022, Metra officials agreed to approach the transition on 2 separate parts, Metra spokesman Michael Gillis said in an email. So essentially, they're going ahead and go. I guess the easiest way to put it is they're going to go ahead and hammer this out, transition it in a meaningful, orderly manner, and go ahead and turn these operations over to Metra. Like I said, I don't know the exact details, the terms of it haven't been discussed or disclosed, but I just know UP didn't want the current Union Pacific regime didn't want any more parts of having to maintain and operate those commuter rail operations in that fashion. So at the end of the day, the transition is taking place. And they said first quarter 2024, that should be completely in Metra's control. So that's the rundown for now. When we get back, I'm going to take a short break here. When I get back, I will start breaking down the East Palestine derailment, some of the implications from that. And see you after the break.
Diverging Clear is sponsored by EME Rail Solutions, LLC. We don't own rail cars, locomotives, or tracks. But if you do, we provide cutting-edge solutions to maximize your assets. Visit us at emerail.net to learn more.
And welcome back to the Diverging Clear Podcast, Episode 1, Season 3, The Wreck. Let's get down to the nitty gritty of it. I got some information too on this little break. I'll share that in my closing thoughts. So where are we beginning here? We're starting with the East Palestine derailment. Everybody's heard of it. I'm not going to go too deep into, you've heard about it. If you haven't, you can Google it. You can Google the mess on CNN. Just Google. Put in East Palestine derailment, anything general details that you want to know about the incident. But this particular incident occurred on February 3rd, 2023. An NS train heading from Madison, Illinois to Conway, Pennsylvania, derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, causing a fire and release of hazmat into the surrounding areas. Now, that part we'll get into a little bit more nuance. That's a little bit more nuanced, but that's the basis behind the part that we're talking about, that I'm getting ready to talk about here. So, after the derailment occurred, says Ohio officials issued urgent order following hazmat train derailment. So when they, this is also from Progressive Railroad. So the next thing that happened was on, I'm trying to remember if the date is on here, but Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and Columbiana County officials late last night issued an urgent warning and an evacuation order for the residents remaining within one plus mile radius of the Norfolk Southern train derailment that occurred February 3rd in East Palestine near the Ohio-Pennsylvania state border. The derailment prompted a massive fire which continues to burn. Last night, a drastic temperature change occurred in a rail car, creating the potential for a catastrophic tanker failure that could cause an explosion with the potential for deadly shrapnel traveling up to a mile, DeWine said in a prepared statement. 50 cars of the 141-car train derailed. 20 hazardous material cars were in the contest, 10 of which derailed. 5 of the derailed hazmat cars were carrying vinyl chloride. Yesterday evening, DeWine called the Ohio National Guard to the scene to assist local authorities. Although an evacuation order was issued shortly after the derailment, about 500 residents declined to leave their homes after the initial evacuation order. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and NS are monitoring air quality. The National Transportation Safety Board is the lead agency providing updates on the incident. NS team members are on the scene. The company has established a family assistance center to help those directly affected by the derailment. NS is also supporting the efforts of the American Red Cross and its temporary community shelters through a $25,000 donation, NS officials said in a press release. Okay, so that's just a little background as to what occurred initially in the first first day or so after the derailment occurred. The issue is that's really that whole statement really just doesn't sit right with me, but I'll continue to talk a little bit more about what was going on. So that was the original initial statement released. And at that point, NS made a couple of catastrophic decisions in their handling of the initial release and the temperature change and how they handled the vinyl chloride and those different things. I'll talk about it a little bit here in a second. But in this next statement, this is what the NS came out, their mitigation plans were for the hazardous material, the remaining hazardous materials that was on the derailment site. And this is the next headline from the, according to Progressive Railroad. So this says, NS completes controlled release of fumes at derailment site. Yeah, completes controlled release of fumes at derailment site. So right there, that tells you that they intentionally released these chemicals, these hazardous materials at the site, which raises a lot of questions, a whole lot of questions. And so, I don't think they should ever done that. But here's the statement from Progressive Railroading regarding that quote-unquote controlled release of fumes at the derailment site. So it says, Norfolk Southern controlled release of chemical fumes from a derailment site in East Palestine, Ohio was successful, the railroad said today according to local news media. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro yesterday ordered further evacuations around the area where toxic chemicals continue to burn following the February 3rd derailment of the NS train that was carrying hazardous materials. The governors ordered the evacuation because vinyl chloride contained contents in 5 rail cars were unstable and could potentially explode, causing deadly disbursement of shrapnel and toxic fumes. To alleviate the risk of uncontrollable shrapnel from an explosion, NS yesterday conducted a controlled release of the vinyl chloride. According to the NS, the controlled release process involved burning the rail car's chemicals, which release fumes into the air that can be deadly if inhaled. 50 rail cars of the 141 car train derailed in East Palestine. I'm not gonna read through all that. We just discussed that. And so that was what the NS ended up doing because of the unexpected temperature change in a rail car, the risk of explosion, blah, 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 all of that. So that was their justification for why they did that. But in essence, what the NS did was unleash hell on the residents and the surrounding area and environment. You read some of the articles, some of the different things. What they actually did was puncture the rail cars containing that vinyl chloride and let it drain into essentially a pond that they dug. This content flowed into there, and at which point in time they set it on fire. So basically, they turned that derailment site into a freaking hazardous material incinerator. All the contents burned. They got into the water supply. You saw pictures and everything of fish and all these different types of animals coming up sick. You saw like a rainbow colored film on the surrounding creeks and waterways. You saw a lot of destruction, and that wasn't. Some of that came probably from the derailment, but a lot of it came from when they punctured those cars, and that stuff got into the environment. Now I have the one problem I do have in this whole matter was, where was the local environmental protection agencies? Where were what regulations allowed them to essentially tap these cars, drain them out, and burn them. There's no regulations because it seemed like there's a lot more options that could have been done. The one thing that I think they could have done was they could have transloaded those materials into trucks. There were other ways to do it than burning and setting this stuff on fire in the middle of a goddamn community. That's where I kind of got a little bit upset with the EPA, the DOT, the federal government, and the Ohio state government didn't do much to help or to evaluate what the NS plans were. I don't even know if the NS had to tell them what the plans were. But that's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be rectified and remedied, because I just there were so many other ways, and I think I know the reason behind it. I'll speculate. This is an opinion. This isn't fact. But I believe they were trying to get those cars drained so that they could get them moved off site and they can get that rail line back open. That's the only thing that I can see what their sense of urgency was. Instead of transloading that stuff into trucks or what have you, was to burn it so those rail cars would be empty. Those rail cars could then be lifted onto a trucked out of sight, and while they're doing that, moving those cars, they can start restoring the rail so that the rail service can return. They can return the rail service. So that was a bad call on the NS's part. I just highly believe that there was other mitigating things they could have done instead of turning that city into a goddamn hazardous material inferno. Residents became sick. Wildlife became sick. Hell, even we just was reading an article and or watched a news piece in CNN where the CDC sent people out there to monitor health conditions of the community and kind of do health assessments. And hell, several members of the CDC team got sick. They said it only lasted 24 hours and they were able to return to work within 24 hours. But the fact of the matter was, the CDC field agents, field associates got sick from being in that area. And one thing that people pointed out was they were able to leave the area after they finished their work. Those residents have to stay there. They have to stay there. They don't have any other place to go. So you're leaving them in an environment that is toxic, that was toxic enough to get CDC officials, field workers sick, and they have to return there. That's a lot. That's a lot. So the other thing I wanted to point out too about this whole thing was that, and I'll kind of disclose this a little bit in the in my concluding thoughts here, but me and another industry friend of mine, Josh Page, we've been talking about what's been going on, because let me tell y'all, East Palestine is the first one you've heard about, hazardous materials spill that you really heard about, but this ain't the only derailment, especially on the Norfolk Southern. And I'll say this is that because over the past, there was a derailment in Sandusky, Ohio, where tank cars came off of fell off of an overpass onto a busy street there that was closed for several days after an NS train derailed. Luckily, I don't believe those was hazardous material, but they definitely were tank cars. We've seen this a lot, and so me and Josh started talking about this particular phenomenon that we were seeing. I said, I want to say it's almost a year and a half, 2 years ago. I said, Josh, something ain't right with these trains that's being built. He said, yeah, I kind of agree. I said, we're seeing a PSR, we're seeing NS and these other railroads, they're running with distributed power units in the middle of the train, because essentially what they're doing is combining two trains into one. And so the concern we were raising was, I said, Josh, we're seeing a lot of derailments, and from just the images, the pictures we saw, I'm like, I don't think they building these trains right. And the reason that we talk about building trains the right way, the movement of trains is physics. I don't care what, it's all physics. So if you have a certain amount of weight behind another certain amount of weight, if the weight at the head of the train is less than the weight at the rear of the train, it causes problems with train handling, slack run in, and all of that stuff, which can kick cars off the rail. And so more and more of these incidents were piling up, and we were seeing them, and I'm like, man, we both like, man, I wish I could see a consist of this train. I said, of these different derailments, because I said, I don't think they're building them right. And the reason you say building right is because you should have your lighter part of it, your heavy part should be towards the front, your lighter part should be towards the rear. Meaning that all your heavy cars are at the front of the train. If you got light cars, heavy, super heavy cars, those cars will run in, and then with the force of all that tonnage behind it can kick cars off the rail in curves, on grades. It's like I said, it's basic physics. And so there are certain regulations that you're supposed to abide by to reduce the reduce the slack action, to reduce the forces on the cars, to keep them on the rail. And me and Josh's background, I worked in intermodal for a lot of years, and in general freight too. But we used to have certain rules that we had to follow when we were building planned trains. And one of the things that we always had to watch in certain areas was trailing tonnage. So that term, trailing tonnage, means is how many tons do you have behind a set of empty cars? It's limited because those empty cars easily get kicked off the rail if you got a lot of trailing tonnage behind it, or they are speed restricted. They're restricted to a certain speed to reduce those forces. So as we were looking at this, we're constantly seeing this, and we're looking at how the cars are derailed. We're like, man, they're not building these trains right. And then I want to say maybe about a month or two, right after the derailment of this, a former FRA administrator also mentioned that he was concerned with PSR and that the way that they were building the car or building the trains, the physics involved in the building of the trains. It's more than just slap cars together and send them out on the rail. You have to build them a certain way, but it seemed like they were shortcutting this due to the PSR. They're trying to reduce their terminal dwell time. They're trying to get the trains out as fast as possible. So they just couple two trains together and then let the chips fall where they may. At least that's my opinion, is what they were doing. And so as I continue to watch this, and I'll just continue to look, and me and Josh were, discussing how these trains should be built as opposed to how they were being built. Well, today, Josh sent me another article about how the FRA has now issued a safety advisory concerning the building of the trains. Now, this came out of Trains Magazine, or Trains Newswire. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So it says, FRA issues safety advisory on train makeup issues. I'll just read it briefly. So, it says the Federal Railroad Administration on Friday issued a safety advisory calling on railroads to address potential safety risks resulting from the structure of long freight trains, saying it has noticed a rising trend in recent incidents where train build and makeup have been identified as a potential cause of contributing factor. Limitations on train lengths are among the FRA's recommended best practices to address the issue. Advisory 23-02 available here. Cites 6 derailments since May 2021, 3 on Union Pacific, 1 on Kansas City Southern, and 2 on Norfolk Southern. All involve trains of 125 cars or more, feature distributed power units, the DPs or DPUs, far exceeding 4,000 trailing tons. The maximum weight threshold established by a 1992 AAR guide and had an empty car as the first to derail. Other characteristics were shared in half or more of the incidents. The NS derailment in East Palestine, Ohio was not among those cited, but the railroad's March 4th derailment in Springfield, Ohio was. So this is just basically one more other part here. It says, while the basic concept of train makeup for mixed manifest trains is to place loaded cars at the front of the consist, which I just stated, and empties at the rear, railroads use computer programs to assist with this process and other factors such as pre-blocking for destinations, complicated train buildings. Placing the DPs is also crucial, as illustrated by a recent accident report from the Transportation Safety Board of Canada on the 2020 Canadian Pacific derailment. The accident led CP to changing the configuration of DPUs on some long grain trains. So that's some of the backstory behind what I'm kind of mentioning there. And so when a lot of this stuff is what we're talking about is just basic train buildup. It's the way that you build the cars, the way that you align the cars. And a lot of that stuff I think was forgotten or thought wasn't as significant when PSR especially hit the Norfolk Southern. I know they're trying to make corrective actions on it now. I know I've seen they've restricted the train lengths on certain trains and different things like that. But the fact of the matter is that the railroads knew what was going on. The railroads understood what was going on. And I'm gonna say this: NS effed up by burning that stuff and burning that stuff at the derailment site. But I digress. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is, like I said, it's been, people were amazed that there were 1,000 derailments a year. And I'm like, that's probably the only ones we know about. But at the end of the day, the concepts and the makeup of these trains are important. The handling of these trains are important. And the way that I guess I kind of feel bad and I guess I oversold what I thought our governmental oversight was, is that we don't have much governmental oversight as far as the way they handle hazardous materials. It's the railroad's choice and the EPA just has to be notified about it, or it just didn't seem right. It seemed like someone should have came and said, assess the situation, said this is how we're gonna handle it, this is what's best for the environment, the community, the people around it, this is how we're gonna handle it. It kind of left it to NS to say, well, we think that this is, or this issue might become so, this is what we're gonna do. And everybody's like, okay, do it that way. So I don't like that. And I don't think, and I'm not trying to say the railroad, the federal government needs to be overbearing, but I don't think they should just be able to punch a tank car without going through some type of process or approval. Draining 5 tank cars of vinyl chloride and burning it in the middle of a community and thinking that's okay. So on this next part here, I want to cut to the conversation I had with Jermaine about this, talking about what railroads know and don't know, and how much they're willing to just basically not acknowledge what's going on and just continue to operate the way that they operate. So I'm gonna take a quick, I ain't gonna say I'm gonna take a break, but I want you guys to check out this clip from me and Jermaine discussing this derailment when I was out in Baltimore. Had a real nice conversation. Just wish I had more footage, but here's the upcoming footage of me and Jermaine discussing the railroad's responsibility and what should be going on moving forward.
On the report, you can already see where changes need to be made. Norfolk Southern is going to have to change the thresholds of their hot box detectors. That's one of the things that's going to come from it. The crew did everything that they was trained to do. How do I know that? Because that's what I was trained to do. Something like that happen with chemicals that can have the possibility to wipe out a town or anything like that on, you are taught to, if you can, tie the train down, tie the brakes down when you can, and then cut away and get up out of Dodge. Call a dispatcher immediately. everything like that. Let them know what cars you were carrying. Chances are the dispatcher already knows what you were carrying. So this crew is heroic. You know what I mean? It's just unfortunate that the people in that cars and things like that we would learn from. So I hope that we do learn from this.
The one thing I like to say about like when we talk about it ain't like we don't know, we don't know whether we don't know or they don't care. I'm going to lean towards the side that they don't care, because the simple fact is that we know we have all the data, we have everything laid out pretty. It's laid out as to what you should and shouldn't do, and it's like I said, the whole PSR thing. I'll say the CN has gotten it right now. But I can tell you, when they rolled out PSR on the EJ&E territory after they acquired us, they did not care who got hurt. They just wanted their plan implemented, which is kind of what you saw from UP, initially the NS, CSX, when they rolled out PSR. They did not give two damns about who got affected. They were gonna cut and get to their numbers. That was their whole philosophy: cut, get to these numbers. I don't care who's affected. And we lost a lot of customers because of that. Matter of fact, they forced a lot of customers to go to trucking or be shut down because they didn't want to deal with that traffic as a result of PSR. So when you look at that, that's all where I come into the fact of the actions show that they don't care. The other thing that you was talking about with the crew doing what they were trying to do, one thing that I learned in the rail industry for the actions of them cutting away and getting away, it's a dead crew. If you got dead crew members, they're no good to what's going on. They have a lot of information about what's in that train, what happened, what they felt, and if that crew doesn't get away from that situation and they end up being in a situation where they're trapped, they do no good to anybody, to that community, to the company, to the nation. They do no good. So that's something to protect them, to make sure that they get home too. So as you saw our conversation between me and Jermaine, kind of discussing, I kind of like the different points that Jermaine was making, that we've got the data. It's not even a question of whether or not what should be done and how it should be done. But just the blatant choosing not to do it. So one thing I'll say in my closing remarks here is that we got to do better. And then when I say we, I'm talking the rail industry. I'm talking about on a federal level. I'm talking about on the state level. I'm talking about on the corporate level. Everybody's got to do better. We've been really more and more so leaning toward or moving towards a laissez-faire type of governmental oversight, and I don't think that's good. Laissez-faire is always proven to crush the people and enrich the corporations. Now, that's not me saying that I'm anti-corporation or whatever. I'm not, but I'm about also doing the right thing. Like, people have to live there. People have to live in these various places that these railroads move trains through. They should be doing the best that they can to take care of their trains and taking care of those communities that they travel through. You know, the other big thing that I'm concerned about is the kind of, it just goes back to the hands-off approach to everything. There's no I kind of equate it to when I play basketball, maybe some of y'all play football. In basketball, you play a certain way. You play defense a certain way. You play offense a certain way. And most of the time, what you do early on in the game is you see how much the referee is going to let you get away with. And then you keep pushing it to the limit till they call a foul. So in this case, over the past 10 years, maybe even longer, the railroads saw how far they could go before a foul would get called. They saying no fouls been called. They giving flagrant ones and flagrant twos, and and they still allow them to play on, move the drill, play on. You know, so I think we have to, like I said, I'm not for over regulation, but I'm not for no regulation at all. We got to do better. We need our federal officials, our federal leaders to stop waiting on looking at each other, waiting on someone to make a decision on how we're going to move forward. You know, a lot of times everybody was mentioning, well, you know, Trump rolled this back, Trump rolled that back. Yeah, but you're in power now. You can also reinstate those things too. So there's a lot of blame to go around on everyone. But at the end of the day, me as being a railroader, I always wanted to make sure that when I was on the train, I did everything I could to keep it on the rail, and I did everything I could to make sure that none of my ill-gotten actions would affect the community I was traveling. That was whether as a brakeman, as a train dispatcher, as a chief train dispatcher. My goal was to make sure we moved stuff safely. Because those communities didn't ask for these chemicals to be traveling through them, but yet still they do. And when they do travel through them, it should be the railroad's responsibility and the federal government's mandate that they do so. And when they don't, that they are held accountable. That's simple. Accountability. I was reading an article and they're talking about, but the NS may have to pay for the cleanup. I'm like, well, who the hell else is going to pay for it? They derailed it. Why would the NS not be responsible for the cleanup? Who else is going to pay for that? Us, the taxpayers? I just, for the life of me, that whole story kind of blew my mind. I was like, so they were considering not paying? So like a lot of these things, it just doesn't make any sense. It puts the burden on us for living. Basically for living in these areas. I love trains. I always loved trains. I grew up next to train tracks. Probably why I'm so infatuated and so passionate about this industry. But to think that the railroad was not going to have to pay for all of that damage, that just made no sense. And it didn't sound like NS was volunteering right away either. They didn't come in and say, hey, well, no matter what the cost, we're going to take care of it. You didn't hear that in the first couple of days until everybody started jumping in their ass. Then they started making, because they started with that little, that $25,000 donation. What the heck was that going to do? Nothing. So at the end of the day, man, we all gotta roll back this laissez-faire type of attitude towards corporate governance, because it is proven time and time again. If ain't nobody watching, ain't nobody calling the foul, they gonna foul. And that's not just the rail industry, that's every industry. If the referee ain't paying attention, if the referee letting them play, they gonna play hard and they gonna foul and they gonna kick and they gonna bite and they gonna scream. That's what they gonna do. So, I think that's my rant for this one. Thank y'all for tuning in to the Diverging Clear Podcast, episode number 1, season 3. Season 3, baby, season 3. The Wreck. Hopefully I gave y'all a little bit of insight on some of my thoughts and me and Jermaine's thoughts on this. Don't forget to click subscribe to us on YouTube at the Diverging Clear Podcast on YouTube. Also, we're also available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple. Listen, somebody. Apple, Google, Spotify. Yeah, you know where to find your podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Diverging Clear _1. Also at Instagram at Diverging_Clear_podcast. I think I got something else. Oh yeah, email. Our email, if you got any questions or comments about the episode you just watched, that's also available. Our email address is divergingclearpodcast@gmail.com. divergingclearpodcast@gmail.com. So thank you again for tuning in to the Diverging Clear Podcast. Keep you posted on when the next one's going to come out. But thank you again for tuning in. Y'all stay safe out there. If y'all got any show ideas too, it's something y'all want to learn about, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM on Instagram. I check them all the time. So anything that you want to hear about or learn about, hit me up with a topic, and we'll see if we can make it happen. But until next time, y'all stay safe out there. Thank you for tuning in once again, and y'all take care.